Hi.
I was like, we're not gonna make them wait.
I know. I'm still learning IG Live. I'm working it out. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I was telling someone, I was like, yeah, we're IG family, but I've never met her before.
I know, right? It's like when you sent me the DM, you were like excited to finally meet you. I was like, we're always like sis.
Right. And alas, so like we don't know each other. So what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna introduce myself really quickly, and then you're gonna introduce yourself, and then I'm gonna have this initial question, and then as you know, there were a million questions submitted. I don't really know. Listen, I'm kind of here just for your platforms. You can share them all the great. I want you to share with them all the great things you're doing, because a lot of parents are out here really struggling to figure out what to do, and you're offering
they're by themselves, right?
Thinking they're by themselves, and you've been doing this for years. One, you're not new to this, as they say, you're true to this, and so you already have things in place. Even I know you've done like free workshops to give people an introduction of what it could take, and then you also have something structured. So I don't want to say it, whatever it is, wrong. I'm going to let you say, but I know you have solutions, and that a lot of parents are looking for the solution. So
it's under control, guys. We have it under control.
And I really appreciate your taking the time to be with us.
Thank you. I warned my children not to come in here. Let's see.
Really? Well, children rule the world, so we all know they do what they want to do.
Yes, they do. I just live here.
You just live there. Okay, well, everyone, my name is Veronica. I am an entrepreneur and author. I'm the founder of a company called Boxxout that designs creative solutions for social chains, and Black Baby Books is one of them. It is one of my favorite things I've ever created, because I get to meet awesome people like Nikolai and everyone who supports the authors who support our platform. So really, thank you everyone for being here and being part of the Black Baby Books family. And now I'm gonna basically, for the most part, turn you over to Nikolai, ask you a few questions, but please introduce yourself and talk about anything you would like.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for the work that you do. It is really one of my favorites. I'm always like, do I have to repost every one of her posts? I'm like, yes, what did you read last night? Yes, they are. Yes, Obama. Yes. So thank you so much for putting good quality content out there that's really dedicated to centering Black children and literacy, because we need it.
Thank you so much.
And so just to give you guys an introduction, my name is Nikolai Pizarro. I have been a homeschooling mother forever. My son is 12. He went to public school for one semester in kindergarten, and then this year he went to public school and to private school for about 6 months, and we can share a little bit about that experience in a minute. So there's my son, Nicholas. He is amazing. He is amazing. He is a free child. He has ADHD. He has sensory processing, and then he's also gifted. And so he's like this mixed mash of beautiful challenges. And he really has, done everything for me. Before him, I was a banker. And so, and I was like shallow and lame, guys. So this child came in and was like, no, we're going to get you together.
That's amazing.
So I always say he is my burning bush. And so then, because he really purposed me, and while I was pregnant, I wrote my book, Ring the Alarm, which is, I realized that my child and I would have significant advantages. I went to a top university, undergrad and graduate school, and I was like, my child is going to have significant advantages, but really, not really, because we're only as good as our peers in our community. And so if he could really, really well, but 80% or 90% of Black boys did not, then really that does nothing for me. And I always say, it's not about your child, but who are our children going to marry, right? Who are they going to do business with? Who are who are going to be their friends? And so we have to be vested, not just in our children,
everybody's child,
children, right? Because there's a quote I always share: they make up 24% of our community, but 100% of our future. And so if we want to co-create, right, what the future of our community looks like, this is what we do. We really add intention and devotion and really pour into the children that we have in our homes. And so I took parenting in my call as a divine call. And I was pregnant with purpose. And so I published my book. We're coming on the 10th year.
So can you say what Ring the Alarm is about?
So Ring the Alarm is a 0 to 5 guide, and it breaks for parents and caregivers. So it's not just for parents. And really, I say in there is really for anybody who cares about children. Because if we get the first 5 years right, if we get the early childhood period right, we have serious implications for what our community could be. And once I saw the data, I'm like a numbers person. Like I said, I'm a banker. I'm a numbers person. And once I saw the data, if we invest in really the most marginalized children, the return on the dollar beats the S&P, and that has been quantified, right? There's a gentleman, the Heckman equation, they quantified, he won the Nobel Prize in economics. He came out of University of Chicago. I went to University of Chicago as an undergrad. Well, they're saying this is where we need to put our dollars. Now, America won't do it because America doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
This is what we need to do as a community. So Ring the Alarm is that, like, ring the alarm. We as a community need to understand the science and the power of early brain child development, because it really breaks cycles of prison and poverty. And so once I really got the data, I was like, how do I have a whole degree and no one told me this?
Right.
And I realized that all these academics and policymakers are having conversations about us, but that nobody really was having the conversation about the importance of 60 years of brain science data is there, right? And so I was like, how come we don't know this? And so I wrote a book that took into account race and class, and I broke down the science in very like manageable bites so that everybody can get it, but everybody needs to understand, yes, you read, but why do you read? Yes, you like breastfeed, but why do you breastfeed? Yes, you don't hit, but why don't you hit? And so all of these things, but backed up by science, and I wrote this book. And so I was like stalking this lady on Twitter, right? Because she's like this amazing. And now we're actually friends and we're co-hosts. But at the time, I was on Black Twitter, just stalking her. She's like this big deal in early childhood. And she was like, oh, I'm going to be in Puerto Rico. And I was taking care of my mother is from Puerto Rico. And she was there. She lives there. And so I was taking care of her because she was sick. And I was like, oh, man, this is because I'm still a banker. I still have a mortgage bank at the time. And I'm like, I can go pick you up at the airport. And I picked her up at the airport. And I was just like, listen, you don't even have to pay me for the cab ride. I just want you to read this manuscript for this book and tell me, because she's an early childhood director, if I'm off or if this is really important. And she was just like, where have you been? I have been in early childhood for 30 years. And why didn't we think of just giving the moms the science?
The data.
Like, everybody needs to understand the data. And so that book has been in print, and I have been working directly with parents and private and public early childhood organizations for 10 years. And then, of course, your children grow, and then you don't stay in early childhood and you start doing other things. And so now for the last 6 years, I have been doing homeschooling and self-directed consulting. But guys, if you get nothing else, if we get the early childhood right, we get it all right. And so it's very important that we all, whether or not you have a 3-year-old, that you understand why we need to pour into 3-year-olds. So my son is 12. I have a 3-year-old now. Even as he continued to grow, I still continue to teach and advocate for early childhood now and forever.
There's one question. One woman party says, what's the name of it? It's called Ring the Alarm.
It's called, Amazon, but you can get to the link through my website, which is youcanschoolwithus.com.
Youcanschoolwithus.com. Okay. Let's see. So can you still hear me? I see like a little, oh, here we are. Okay. You know, IG can be funny. So
They're just like straight haters.
so let me
Somebody said ECE is my life, 20 years plus. Yes, for life.
that's
For
awesome.
life.
Okay.
Everybody.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I wanted to ask you a question. I know we had like a million questions that were submitted, but there's a quote that you have that we feature, and it says, if we try to recreate schools, we will fail. If we reimagine learning, we can thrive. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because, you know, some people are interested in schooling, some people are being forced now to homeschool. And so can you help take some of the pressure off these parents? Because they're like, what am I supposed to do? And I love that you're saying, if we reimagine learning, we can thrive.
Yeah, because there's a difference between school and education, and there's a difference between school and learning. They're not the same thing. And so I feel like we have used them interchangeably for so long that we think they're one and the same. It should be called, the Department of Education should be the Department of Schooling. It's a different process, right? Learning and schooling. And so we have to be honest, these systems prior to COVID were not really serving us, right? So now the schools are closed, but even prior to the schools when the schools were open, you know, we still have a very low literacy rate in terms of literacy proficiency. We have a huge problem with STEM in our schools, or the lack of STEM, and in our ability to really compete in those fields. We have a huge problem with just everything. Entrepreneurship, right? We're in debt. We don't know how money works. Numeracy is terrible. Comprehension is terrible. And so when you really look at it, you're like, well, these systems weren't really working. And so if the schools are closed, how about we don't center schooling? Because schooling was not working. And so we go back to, how do we actually get to a different place? And how do we have children that are thriving, that feel good? Children are depressed, more depressed than ever. We have more anxiety than ever. We're out of control, like our body, our agency, right? We have problems. We're addicted to food, or addicted to drugs, or this is as a nation, right? So the output of this schooling process is not really yielding a whole lot of positive things as a country. And then if you really look at our community in particular, I always say, you know, we have no empirical data that says that the schooling process has actually helped us to break out of poverty cycles. There's no data. Now there's this illusion, right? There's this idea and this programming that that's what schools do, but we have no data to prove that. And so what we really need is education and a new relationship. And so now that we have our children in our home, how do we recreate that and make sure that our children's education is aligned with the things that we feel are important? I would say, listen, if you sit back, if this is somebody for whatever reason says this is your last year to ever be with your child, you will never be with your child again. What will you teach that child that's important in life, right? What matters? Mindfulness, friendships, character, morality, work ethic, like proficiency, all of the things, write all of the things that matter, and then see, is your child's school experience aligned with all of the things that matter? And most people tell me it's not, right? The schooling process is not aligned to all of the things that matter. And so we're doing children a disservice, and we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so if we try to recreate school, we're going to fail. But if we say, let's center our children's education in the things that we know for certain matter, and are going to carry us into the future, then we'll thrive.
Okay. And so, you know, a lot of people are thinking, I'm working. How do I think I attended, I don't know if it was one of your workshops, or I may have watched one of your videos, and it appeared to me that your education is like centered on the child, like they could do you have self-directed options, right? And then can you talk a little bit about, if you're a working parent, if you're working from home and you're educating your child, what are some things you can do to make sure that they're learning what they need to learn, but maybe everything that that they need to learn isn't as hands-on with directly with the parent or
Yeah, it's impossible.
strategies.
I couldn't get anything done if I was like trying to teach them in a directed way, nor would I want to teach them in a directed way. Because what I tell people, like when is a child going to learn how to assert themselves and how to set boundaries? Like why are we always in therapy talking about boundaries, and we don't prioritize and we procrastinate, like all of those things that we're like going to therapy for? Like where did we learn, but really where did we learn those things, right? A lot of it is that we spend 14 years of our lives being told what to do, being told not to focus, because schools don't let us focus, right? A child is presented a piece of information on Monday, is brand new. He or she is supposed to just focus on it for 40 minutes, and then the bell rings, and then they just have to focus on something else for another 45 minutes. And then the bell rings, and so it's like nothing is important. And then it's tested on Friday, and they never really visited again. So was it important? So there's no kind of deep knowledge or analysis of anything in school, right? And this is no shot at teachers. This is just the system, right? And so we don't want to recreate that. So what I do when you're at home, you really have to create an environment and spend time preparing an environment that allows them to self-direct, right?
Okay.
So that you can work. And this also works because if parents don't work inside the home and they have to go get somebody to watch their children, right? And it could be, we forget that we have always worked and had children in this country. We have always worked and had children.
Yep.
And so this is nothing new. And so who took care of our children when we worked before? It really was a grandmother or somebody up the street, or it doesn't have to be a certified teacher. I know everybody's like, okay, now I got to get the certified teacher and I got to pay the teacher. You're like, no, you don't. You do not. Somebody needs to be, you need to have some level of care, right? And then prepare the environment so the child can move about and self-direct. And so what that does in many instances is solve, and I know that there are people who cannot pay even like extra childcare, right? And so I understand that. But there's a lot of people that can't pay for a private tutor, but they could pay for just some other kind of care. And that does not have to be this certified person, because we're all certified. We have always had caregivers in our community.
That's true.
Certifications, if you think about it, like what is a certification? When people are like high quality care and certification, we're like, who made that up? Like when did that start, right? The certification for a teacher, like that's in the grand scheme of humanity, that is like a 7-year-old thing, right? That if an agency just started 10 years ago, we will be fine without it, right?
So, yeah.
So what we do I'll say that. So we can our children could be taken care of by us or other caregivers. And what we do is prepare the environment. And so
the question, there were two questions. One was, how do we prepare it? And at what age can you start preparing an environment for learning? And
I mean, as young, children as young as like 18 months can already have their own shelves. So you set up like a shelving system is what I help most parents do. So set up a shelving system, some inexpensive shelves that they can.
What does that mean? Okay, because I know nothing. So
some inexpensive shelves from IKEA, right, or Target. Just get send some shelves, and then maybe like 6 shelves, right, that they can get to, and have an activity that a child can begin and end on their own, whatever that activity is, right? And so for my 3-year-old, I have an art shelf, and there's paint, and we have to work our way to that. So there's paint, there's a little container that she knows that she has to pour water into it so that she can do the watercolor. There's a rag right next to it, so if there are any spills, you have to kind of think about the entire process. And there's an apron, so she knows she has to put that on. And so this all contained. And when she wants to do art, I don't have to go set it up. If I do, I can oversee her,
Mm-hmm.
but I can move my laptop to that area, and she is like moving about. And when that's done, it needs to go back in the show. There's also, there's one for, there's yeah, it's just like a Montessori center. So there's also, I tell parents this: every child should have a playlist as young as a 3-year-old. My daughter,
Do you mean music when you say playlist?
a playlist for music.
That's so funny because I was just thinking the other day that I wanted to create a Black Baby Books playlist. So like, oh, you just made me really happy. I gotta ask you what's on yours after this, but
Yeah, so like our children need playlists,
mm-hmm.
and our children need Bluetooth headphones. My daughter, 3.5 she can pair the Bluetooth to the playlist. She picks the playlist, and she works longer in her as she moves through her self-directed, when she's like jamming to her, to her jams, because people are like, children are people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they like the same things you like. So she's over there jamming to her playlist and doing her work. And I'm over here doing my work. And if it wasn't me and it was a caregiver, they would be doing their work, right? And then so what we do is about every 45 minutes, she comes to me. And then we sit for 10 and we cuddle and we talk and we reflect or whatever. And she's not constantly coming to me, because she knows that when that playlist is up, she's gonna get some time. And so she feels better just creating kind of like a rhythm. So the playlists you got to work. If your child is not there yet, if your child needs like a 30-minute playlist, then you do a 30-minute playlist. But over time, and if they're working on things, they will be engaged. You know that if a child is coming to you constantly, it's because they're not engaged. Gotcha. So if they're not engaged, I think people ask me all the time, well, how do I know if something's developmentally appropriate? I'm like, if they're coming to you and they can't focus on it, then that's not developmentally appropriate. But if it's developmentally appropriate, they will leave you alone, because they're doing the thing. Like, children that want to play and work are engaged in their play and their work because it interests them, because it's engaging. The reason that our children are constantly stopping what they're doing is because we're giving them work that's not engaging.
You've actually answered one of the questions. A lot of people have questions about how do we find a good balance between teaching my child on a level and going too far beyond what is age appropriate. But someone else mentioned that I have a rather than kindergartner. How do I teach and make it fun and keep her engaged? She hates what we do now, and it's some kind of like, I don't want to like mess up the program, but it's something that she's not enjoying. Her kindergartner is not enjoying. So your answer is it must not be engaging or age appropriate. So they just have to keep finding. And this is some kind of like online platform that her daughter was not feeling.
And when it comes to online platforms, some children there's a difference between learning. And so this is what happens with online platforms, is that the brain is engaged. Excitability and enjoy are not the same thing. And so you want to have a child experience joy in their work. That's different than excitability in like YouTube, right? So a child might look at it and be like, well, he loves YouTube. You're like, yeah, that might not be that they love it. It's excitability. That's different. Right? And that's like, there are all these bells and whistles that are inside of animation that trigger the brain to pay attention, because your brain is saying, okay, like fire and bright things, and I must pay attention, I must be engaged. That's really like fight or flight response. And so just because they like a YouTube or whatever, but this parent doesn't like the YouTube thing. I mean, this parent is saying, my child is not
feeling this. Yeah.
Not feeling, well, don't do it, right? And so children, especially if they're young, it's a 3-dimensional child that wants to do things with their hands. So blocks, people are like, okay, well, I don't want them to play with blocks all the time because I want them to learn. Right? And then you're like, well, blocks is learning, because it's how you learn spatial relationship, geometry relationship. I always say, listen, if a child is building a fairy house, or a child is building a house with Legos, a child is really learning like space and perimeter and area. Like all of these math concepts really in building are there. And so play is real work. It's not just like, just whatever. Yeah, you don't want them to play Fortnite all day.
Right.
But you do want them to play in terms of work, play. I use to be engaged in one's interests is play, because some people think play is something else. But anytime that a child, and when I say child, it could be a 3-year-old or a 12-year-old. My son is playing, right? To be a 12-year-old when he's doing what he really has an interest in. And so when we allow children to like play and be self-directed, they don't really need us that much, right? They just need us to guide them through X, Y, and Z, and to come back. And we might prompt them. In kind of their interest. Let me give you a quick example with my son, because he's 12. So my son experienced racism. And so he was like, oh, now I want to be an anti-racist. I was like, go be an anti-racist, baby. Go do it. Like, find out what anti-racism is. So then he was on that. And then like 2 weeks later, he made me get him this anti-racist book. He was like all anti-racist for about 2 weeks. And he was like, you know what I realized? This is him at 11. I feel that before I could be an anti-racist, I kind of have to study racism. He was like, how can I be anti-racist? And if I don't really understand, I felt racism.
Right.
But I don't really understand racism.
Right.
I was like, I think that's fantastic.
Right.
How are you going to do that? And he left. And he came back and he was just like, how did people come up with their ideas about, he was like, I don't even know a lot of white people, and I have ideas about white people. And he's like, how did white people have ideas about me? And I was like, go sit with that, go find out. I'm not teaching him anything, right? I'm just like, there to listen. I'm like, go with it. Like, go find out. And he came back and he was just like, I think TV has something to do with it.
Let's see.
I was just like, how does TV he was like, well, before, he was like, is it social media? And I was like, well, what about when there was no social media? And he was just like, it has to be TV. And I was like, well, there was a time when there was no TV. And so he was just like, he kept going back and he was like, Mom, I think a lot of it has had to do with movies. And so then I was like, okay, so how would you study movies and their impact on racism? And now he has this whole curriculum that he's going to go into this new semester. He spent the last part of last semester putting it together, and now he's going into his study. Right?
Your son put together his curriculum?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. When we say it is child directed, because then so you're there like, how would you find out? So you're like, well, there's not really any Black film races curriculums. How would you go about doing that? So you're just there as the parent saying, who can help you with that? Who makes curriculum, right? And so they're like, teachers. Okay, well, not high school teachers and middle school teachers, because they don't do that. Who is? A college professor. Okay, can you go find, and how am I going to get a hold of a college professor? The same way that I would. You have to look it up, and you're going to have to email them, and you're going to see who answers. Right? And then there you go from that until he curated his curriculum. And then my job is you just tell me, Mom, I need this book and it costs $40. It's a graduate level, whatever. Just tell me and then I'll go order it. So so that is his education, right? And you can't tell me this baby is not learning.
No, he's definitely learning.
He's definitely learning, right? And then when he sees that there's math data in there, and he will have to analyze that data. There's an app, and it is about $87 a month. I know that everybody doesn't have $87 a month, but it's $87 a month, and it's 24/7 unlimited math one-on-one tutoring. And I don't do his math with him. First of all, because he doesn't want me to. I love math, and I wish he would want me. I want to teach him math, but he's like, what he needs from me is for me to be his mother. He needs for me to parent him, right? So that's not what he needs. So he goes on this one-on-one thing, and it doesn't give him an answer, and it will go through any math problem that he has, and he'll just he might not do math for weeks, guys, but then he'll sit in his closet and he'll just do all of the math for a month with this app.
Somebody wants to know what the name. A couple of people want to know what the name of the app is.
It's called Yup, Y-U-P.
It's a math app. Because you say you have a 3-year-old and a 12-year-old, right? And so a lot of the other questions had to do with managing multiple children at different grade levels. Yeah. And so, like, what sort of advice and like talk. I mean, in these questions, also talk about your programming and like however you help.
Yeah, and so let me tell you,
them everything.
Let me plug myself in here real quick.
Okay. Yes.
So
please.
a couple of things. I have right now people are trying to like find care and find support as they come together, and I have a Facebook group. It's called BIPOC, BIPOC led. BIPOC, BIPOC led pandemic pods and micro schools, and so they can find that online.
Big pods, and micro schools.
Oh, I just saw a question about high school.
This is on Facebook, right?
Yeah, they can go there, and then they can link up with people locally that are also looking to just link up and find care and just have their children socialize. Clearly, we're not doing the same kind of socialization that we used to because of Corona, of COVID, but at least they can start to find a local tribe of people, which we all need to have. So, and then we share a lot of resources there. And so I would go there. And in terms of like mixed age group, is like the children will teach each other, and you guys can do things together.
I love that.
I don't listen. My daughter knows so much math. She doesn't listen to me. She listens to her brother. She'll be like, I want to do numbers like Nikolais. I want to be Nikolais' teacher. And so she's like right behind him. And so, and he reads to her. I read to her every day. But he reads to her, and he goes through sound games with her. Right now, I tutor 2 generations. I tutor, I'm doing virtual tutoring with a family, and I show the grandmother a strategy. She shows it to her older granddaughter, and the older granddaughter, we do it all at the same time. So I'm like, Miss Barbara, ask her, blah, 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 right? Then Miss Barbara teaches Layla, and then Layla turns around and teaches Naya. So we're all doing it. And we do a whole lesson in 35 minutes, and we're done. And then the next day, while Miss Barbara is working, because she works all day, during the day, now Layla, which is the older one, knows what to work with the 5-year-old.
Gotcha.
Because
that's awesome.
And this is when I tell you we're gonna have to work it out, we're going to have to work it out. And so, so you have those children that I just mentioned. That's 7 and 5. During the day, they don't do much, right? They're like their parent is just keeping them safe. I give them an exercise, and we're only doing this for like a month until they get the swing of things, right? Because I want people to be self-directed. All of my services are intended to facilitate a parent, so the parent knows what to do. And I don't want to even though I have some clients that 3 years later, they're still here. And then, but ideally,
they're like, no, I want these training wheels.
Forever. They're like, okay, well, my child's in another stage. I want to do the rest. So, but the idea is that we don't create a codependency. Like, I don't really want to tutor people's children. I tutor families so that families can do what they have to do themselves, and so they can do it to their nieces, their nephews, their neighbors, because there's only one of me and there's a lot of us, right? And we have to constantly equip each other so that we can have exponential growth.
Yep.
Right? We want to educate the entire community, not just your clients, right? So I'm always educating and equipping not just parents, but parents, parents, nieces, babies, children, right? My son can teach other children. And so, so I have that group. I also have a service that people can, they join for 1, 2, 3, 4 months, and then we meet every single week. 1 week, so there's a 4-week cycle in a month. 1 week we work on parenting skills, because in order for parents to show up for their children, there has to be a certain level of wholeness in them, right? And if we're going to decolonize our households, we're going to have to rethink parenting. We're going to have to rethink curriculum. We're going to have to center our children. We're going to have to serve our children. We're going to have to do healing. We got to do all that work. So week 1, we work on ourselves. Week 2, we come together as a community and we're like, what's working? What didn't work? What do we need? Oh, we need a math resource. We need this, whatever. We call them a mashup. So week 2, we mash up as a group. Week 3, we do a skill building. How do you teach fractions? How do you, we do skill buildings, because, so I call that parent development, PD. So you build a skill, and then week 4, we come together and commune. So we do that, and then the next month we do it again. And so if you do that for 6 months, 12 months, by the end, we have a whole other, we have another whole group of parents that can take the game, teach other people. I have people from my classes that have started businesses in parenting, and I'm constantly plugging them.
That's awesome.
We just want to create more.
Right.
Equip ourselves with more, right? And so that's another service that I have. And then I have short courses that are just how to teach math through play and manipulatives, not through, so that's for children. 3-dimensional children need to have those skills. And we need numbers mastery, but we can do that without being oppressive, right? The whole industry of worksheets and curriculum, this is this stuff never existed. Right? So 50 years ago, there was no curriculum of a workbook or anything, and yet people were mathematicians. So we know that there's a way.
Right.
For people to learn to master.
She's like, they built pyramids, no workbook.
Right? And some of our ancestors taught themselves and then went on to, and there was never any workbook. So clearly there's a way to do this without workbooks. And so through play, through just no screen, just how do we teach children mathematics? So we do that. And what I did through the quarantine was there was some parents approached me because they were going crazy with remote learning. And they were like, how do I do this? The children hate the screen. And so I coached a group of parents and I recorded those Zooms. And now I'm selling those Zooms with a guide for $35. And so it's very affordable. So you have the math one, you have one that is how to teach your children to read. So the first part, the early literacy part. If the children, and I'm wearing a shirt that gives you the cheat code.
So what does the shirt say? Because I can't see.
I always have this on my website, which says sounds, rhyming, clapping, new words, books, questions, and scribbling. Which basically just says, listen, if you teach your children phonics first, right? And then if they know their sounds and they can hear them, and how they learn to hear them is through sound games. So if they can know their sounds and they can hear them, and then you're reading to them so they know that reading has utility, right? If you're developing vocabulary through conversations and nature play. So we have sounds, rhyming, clapping, new words, books, and questions. Always questions. Make inferences in text and make inferences in life. Questions, inquiry. If you do those things, and then you start writing. So let me tell you guys, writing has to come before reading. Writing is about creation, production. Reading is about consumption. So if we really want to, one, radicalize our communities, we need to give people a voice, and we need to be hardwired for creation. So it comes first. It's what you know the sounds, you can hear them, you have thoughts, you have ideas. So before I'm going to teach a child to consume words on print, I want the child to transition into creating and expressing and
I love that.
developing a relationship with print.
And that's so empowering to the child.
Listen, at the beginning, they used to teach Black and women how to read before they would teach them how to write. So that was even before nothing was legal. First, they taught them how to read, and then, but not the writing process, because the writing process is so powerful. The writing process turns you into a creator. And so you want to do that first. So I have this cheat code. I've always posted online, because to me, I was like, this is what we have to normalize. We have to normalize the cheat code. Every parent, every household, everybody in our community just needs to know what to do. Mm-hmm. So I teach parents how to do that. And everything, all of my services are all of my services are meant for you to be independent, to just get the information, get a little bit of support, and then just go run with it. And then they're all very affordable. So I'm very conscious about the fact that who I serve is Black and brown folk. And then look, in 12 years, through donations, people still tip me, people still, stick around. And so I'm still here. When I first came into, people were like, you're going to go teach lower income Black and brown people and leave banking? Like, you're going to starve. And I'm like over here thick. I haven't starved yet. I really believe that the work that you put out there takes care of you. So
it's true. It's so true.
I also want to say that in addition to me, it's some great resources out there. If you have very, very young children, there's Early Childhood Enthusiasts. That's a great account. That's my sister. We met through this work.
This is on Instagram, y'all. Early Childhood Enthusiasts on Instagram.
Yes, if you have some very young children, that's that. Teaching. The other thing is, on my website, you can school with us. There's a whole art curriculum, art history integrated, whereas art history, there's language, it's whatever you want to do with it, and it's free. You just sign up for the website, and then you get 5 days, and it's really to give parents a framework of what they can do with a simple curriculum. You can do anything. I mean, if you have the life of a person, you can study identity. If you have five artists, you can map them. Where are they showing that work? And you can take a map, geography, you can study it like that. If you want to, Alma Thomas didn't identify as a Black artist. She identified just as an artist. So you can study identity. Like, there are all these things that you can do by studying the art. And you can do that with a kindergartner. You can do that with a 12th grader. And so when people are like, but I need more, and you don't need more, right? You need a little bit of space so that children can move through stations. You do. And you need to define what is important to you, right? Define your values. Mm-hmm. Sit down before you buy any curriculum. You sit down, and this is what I sit down and do with children, with parents in my services. I'm like, let's sit down and write a list of what you feel that is important. Mm-hmm. And then after that, like, how do you teach that to a child? How do you give children an opportunity so they can learn that?
Right.
And then that's your curriculum. That is your curriculum. Your child's interests and your family values and your ideas about what makes you successful in life, that is your curriculum. If your child's education is not anchored in that, then, I mean, what else? Right?
Right. Oh, Matt, I wanted to definitely ask this question. I had 3 questions of parents with children with special needs. And are there any resources for homeschooling parents who are homeschooling and children with special needs? Let's see. One person mentions her 7th grader who has an IEP. The other person mentions I'm a low-income family. How do I afford materials I need to educate at home without a science lab? And
Yeah.
I know you have solutions for that because you know how to make anything educational, right? I feel like you're able to create educational spaces using whatever is available.
Everything, the learning is everywhere, right?
Right.
With children, with parents that have an IEP, I think like that is um that is Keisha's in here, like
She's just doing it. I don't. That's she's one of your friends.
I
Or
just saw her
clients?
name. Yeah, she's one of my
She's been doing everything. She's been putting your websites in here. Thank you so much, Keisha. Thank you.
I'm like,
Because I can't do both.
because I have a light and it's really hard for me to see it. But then I'm like, look at, yeah. So
Keisha's been representing.
nice. And she is amazing. She's like this work at home attorney. She like fights for the people, and then she has 2 children. She's just like amazing. And so yeah, for children that have an IEP is the one time where I do deviate, where I'm like, you do want to continue to stay within your district if you're able to. So sometimes I'm like, just do a private home real quick. So a lot of parents ask me this: do I stay doing with my district? Do I stay doing district learning? If the district is telling you that you're going to be in front of a computer for 6 hours, I'm not the person to ask, because I'm going to tell you, they can go kick rocks. That's just not going to work, right? It's not aligned with children. It's just not going to work, right? And the other thing is, I say, we have to decolonize grades too, because unless those grades are going in somebody's transcript in high school, if my 3rd grader gets a C in science, I'm going to be okay. If I am doing my own curriculum. So if I'm doing this remote just because of the times, and my kid has all C's, I'm just going to do the very minimum, and then I'm just going to do the actual work myself. And so that's what I tell people to do. If your child has an IEP, you want to keep them in their district, though.
For the resources.
Okay. And so you just want to keep them for the resources and not pull them out of that district. And then in terms of resources for IEPs, if you guys join the Facebook group, what I have in the next 2 weeks, I have worked out, I have about 3 to 4 specialists that are working on creating resources for different IEPs. Obviously, those are independent, everybody's IEP is different, but resources, I have not forgotten, because I have a child, he's not an IEP because he's homeschooled, but because I have a child that has needs, I have not forgotten my family. And so I am diligent currently creating resources, and they will be inside of that Facebook group. And those resources, for the most part, will be free, because I feel like right now, more than ever, those families just need more support. And now is not the time to necessarily charge, and then they can just pay whatever they can. But those, in the next 2 weeks, we will have those resources for IEP families.
Okay.
Another quick thing, though, my son, so there's some people who don't qualify for Medicaid, but we're also in this struggle because we don't have insurance. So our private interventions are out of control. There's 1 year that it took me 36 months, right? It took us 36 months of a loan to pay for what we had to pay for this personal intervention, because we had to pay for like $14,000 out of pocket.
Wow.
But that service really transformed our household, so we're grateful to it. But that is, the money that goes into interventions is real. But guys, I found, if you guys contact me, I found an occupational therapy that's for children that have problem with vision, their vision system and sensory. They give you the system to work. It's a 12-month program. You have to do it every day for 45 minutes, where you're basically doing, and they send you all of the materials, the eye patch, I mean, my house is like set up like an office,
Mm-hmm.
and it's usually $1,400, and because of COVID, it's like $600
Oh, wow. Okay.
for
So there.
and you have a year worth of therapy that you do. You work on their retained reflexes. People who, I mean, it's amazing, and the fact that I have taken ownership of that process, and every, you know, with children, when you're doing therapies and they're an IEP, like the changes and the improvements are like this,
Mm-hmm.
but and they're like, but you got to keep doing them, and and it takes a year, but the transformations that can happen when you do an intervention are so real. And so just don't be discouraged. There are resources out there. I'm providing some resources, and some resources, just after doing this thing so long, I just have the hookups because, you know, I
Mm-hmm.
just know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for the IP family. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Because like I said, I know nothing. I was just like, I know people are stressed, and I know Nikolai has answers.
In terms, somebody asked who is creating the interventions. Basically, I'm taking occupational therapists, and if you're out here and you're an occupational therapist that is Black, considering creating some routines and some advice and some stuff with me and working. I've been working with behavioral therapists, speech therapists, and occupational therapists and IEP specialists, and we're just like putting together some resources for our families. And like I said, everything, and I'll say this, not everybody was free for me, so I'm paying some folks, but they will be free for the IEP parents inside the group.
Thank you. That's there were like so many questions. It was like hard. I was like, okay, people have questions, but I feel like you addressed so many of them. And it seems
And then
like
Taisha's saying IEP skills. Oh no, just because they're IEP, we're gonna take care of their physiological needs, but at the same time is like we're still gonna make sure that they have their phonemic awareness. They're still gonna be self-directed. It depends on obviously the need and the ability of the child, but you can still have an IEP and thrive and in society. And so we're still going to teach them the game. They're still going to get the mastery. They're still going to get the literacy. They're still going to get decision making, and we're still going to work on executive functions. You know, we're still going to work on the other things as well.
that's awesome. That is like, I can't imagine how beneficial this is to parents. So, because I mean, based on the comments I've recorded, people really are stressed. And what I love about your approach is that you're like, calm down, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, and there are people that we're not going to get to. And this is the other thing, that this is how we have to think about it. Some of us are really in the margin,
Mm-hmm.
right? There are people who don't have a house, and I can't necessarily take care of that person.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are food insecure right now. I can't necessarily take care of that person.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who, right? So there are people who don't have access to internet. True, I can't really take care of that person. So let's take care of this group, and then now that we're together, what we do is, okay, how are we going to help take care of those children next? So 1st let's take care of one thing, and then we do the other piece. For example, I know children in my community. So this year we're transforming my house into a micro school, and it'll be open for 6 other children.
Oh,
and
wow.
We're going to do a permaculture installation, and the children will be self-directed and learn how to run a permaculture farm.
Can you define micro school for people who know nothing?
Yeah,
like
it's
I know
just
nothing.
basically a small. It's not just a homeschool co-op. There's actually a little bit of intentionality, and those children will be here for 3 times a week for 6 hours. It's a little bit more structure, and we have a focus. Even though they're self-directed, we will still together work on literacy and math and numeracy, and we will be focused on social justice and on this permaculture installation. So permaculture is where you create permanent structures to farm and grow food and create sustainability, and they're going to learn how to do that and run the projects. So that's happening. And it's going to be my son, and there's going to be 2 preschoolers, and the other 4 children are going to be in middle school. So they're going to run that, and it's going to be mixed age. There's 1 elementary school, 4 middle schoolers, and 3 preschoolers. So that's going to happen 3 times a week. But the other thing that we've done is that we have found in our community the children that will be staying home alone. Because let's just be honest, if they're like 9 and over, a lot of these kids are going to be home by themselves.
Right.
Right. And so I can't have 30 kids in my house. But what we can do is we're just going once a day and doing a quick check-in.
That's dope.
Knock on the door. Be like,
that's dope.
What's good, Damien? You're good?
Right.
Like, and just for the parent to know somebody checked on my child. That's it. Like, no, we can't take care of everybody. No, I can't bring everybody into my home, but there is something that we can do. And so once you kind of take care of your unit and figure out how you're going to work this out, you figure out care for your child. You figure this out, you figure that. And now that you have that unit kind of taken care of, you can say, you know what, there is somebody that's in a deeper margin than me. Right. And then you're like, how do I meet that need? So it's not, let's take care of ourselves and that we don't think about the margin. It's just like on the airplane. You put your mask on first. Right. Where you put your mask on first, and then you help the other person.
They're kicking us off live.
Oh, we're done, right? We're done.
Okay. All right. Look, tell them where to go. Are all the links in your bio?
After this, all the links will be in my bio. So go to Raising Readers. I was one of the things that I had to do today was to set up my link tree. But you can school with us. You can school with us. Right?
You got 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds. Do it.
Go to You Can School With Us. Follow me on Raising Readers. Go to You Can School With Us is my website. And join the Facebook group, which is BIPOC-led pandemics.
Pods and micro schools. We got it down here.
That's it. And if you have any more questions, go ahead and ask Kaisha after this.
Yes. So follow Raising Readers, and then she's going to get her link tree up there. And thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Me.
Thank you for everything.